Hey, this is the second part of the physical evidence, and here we're going to be dealing more specifically with the five senses. So, sight appeals, size, shape, colors, so on, right? Sense, the appeals and avoidance, things we're trying to stay away from that are going to be distracting to people. Sounds, music, announcements, sound avoidance, all those kind of things are a factor here. A touch appeals, taste appeals. So let's start by using sense in the servicescape in terms of how we actually do that. So why sense? Why is sense important? Because it's the most powerful of the senses of memory. I actually had a friend who I met in Singapore who specialized in sense, right? So she came in, spoke to my classes about what sense are actually about. And it seems that your sense, what you smell through your nose, like goes directly to your brain as opposed to all the other senses which go through some other factor. So it has the ability to create more memorable experiences for visitors and enhances the brand. And a lot of places you see today, and Shangri-La was one of the first to do it, created their own scent. So that if you walk into the lobby, you have a Shangri-La hotel, you know it's a Shangri-La hotel because they use the same scent wherever they may be. And malls and so on have found that this actually creates more opportunity for people to buy, that people are more stimulated by various smells than others, which is really a strange thing, but it's a reality. This is what they have found in the process of things. So very good point here about the importance of it. Here's an example, by the way, of MGM Grand in Las Vegas. They had an issue on two sides. They had an issue with trying to neutralize smoking odor. And secondly, they wanted something that was appealing to the Asian clientele. As I'm sure you're well aware of, the Asian clientele are big gamblers, and that's an important point. In fact, MGM actually, as a side story here, changed their whole entrance in Las Vegas because before, when they first opened, you would enter as if you were entering into the mouth of a lion. Not a good thing if you want to have a good feng shui. So good feng shui, they changed the entrance. Again, here we're talking about sense. So what they did is they went to this company and they came up with two different scents that helped them to balance things off. And what it did was it eliminated the smoke, got rid of that scent altogether, and it established a brand of that gave them a scent that was very attractive to the clientele, particularly their Asian clientele, and they use that throughout the facility today. It's a twofold purpose. Sound is another important one. And here's a study I find interesting, and I hope you do too. This was a simple study done with music in a restaurant, right? So they use slow music and they use fast music, and what they tried to look at is service time, customer time at the table, customer groups leaving before they're seated. That's what that says back there behind that, leaving before they're seated, and the amount of food purchased, the amount of bar purchases. So if you look at the service time, not a lot of difference there. So it didn't affect the service a great deal. From the standpoint of customer time, if you look at the results here, certainly 56 minutes. Where's my cursor when I want it? Somewhere, there we go. There's my cursor. 56 minutes versus 45. That can be pretty significant. So obviously people spent more time at the table with slow versus fast. So that might think, okay, that's maybe not the way I want to go. Interestingly enough, leaving before people were seated because they thought things were going to take too long, less people left under the slow music than the fast music. Maybe that's because in the waiting area they felt more comfortable. Now we look down at the average amount of food purchase, basically equal, so there was very little difference in food. However, note the bar tab. The bar tab was considerably higher than it was in the slow music than fast music. So I'm sure all of you are well aware of where the profit margin is, right? The profit margin is in the liquor. So if you had a choice, where would you go? If you were the owner and the manager of that operation, slow music or fast music? I mean, it's a simple suggestion here, but this study shows that slow music gave you a better overall revenue even if it meant that people stayed longer. Now, you'd have to look at that over time to see whether that's something that's relevant for you and how that plays out and how that works within the rest of your servicescape, but that's an example of sound. One of the first PhD students to graduate from University of Nevada, Las Vegas, who I got to know when I was there, sat in on his dissertation defense, as a matter of fact, did his whole thesis based on Servicescape, and he looked at a Las Vegas casino, in particular the New York, where he was actually working. And what he found in looking at that Servicescape was that the Servicescape's elements, the ambient conditions, right, the senses and how that is, helped with the navigation and the interior decor. All of that had a positive effect, right? It had a positive effect on people. What had no effect was cleanliness and seating comfort, interestingly. No effect, right? On the slot experience itself, that's on the Servicescape perception, okay, the perception of the facilities. On the slot experience, which is really what you're about, the Servicescape effectively gave you a better gaming value. But there was no effect on the slot experience from the staff friendliness or service promptness. None of that had any effect there. So it's just an example of how one might look at this and be able to analyze it more thoroughly in terms of how it's affecting you and maybe what changes you might want to make if you want to have staff more friendly, for example. What are some of the things you need to do in the Servicescape to actually be able to accomplish that objective? Now, here's a great video. Again, I will have that posted. You can take a listen to it about sounds, and it's really a fascinating video, I think, about how sounds project various things. So, in summary, physical aspect: exterior appearance, interior appearance, ambient conditions, in other words, the five senses. The interpersonal factors, employee appearance and employee behavior, all relate to each other. So, being a cost effective, we have to maximize our efficiency and productivity. From a customizing standpoint, we have to focus on the customers. From a technical service quality aspect, we have to maximize the quality of the technical output to the customer. And then from the functional side, we have to make it effective in terms of how the customer interacts with us. So maximizing the environment, recognize the strategic impact, blueprint it, right? We're going back to the blueprint aspect of it. That was a part of the blueprint, if you recall, in terms of how you looked at the blueprint. The top area of it was the Servicescape. Clarify the roles under the Servicescape, assess the physical evidence opportunities, update and modernize on a regular basis. It can be set your plan for design and how you do things into the future. Okay, these are the group discussion questions, which I'm sure your group this week will have a good time enjoying with all of you. So thank you again very much for another lecture.